Welcome back to the Unacceptable News. I'm your host, Justin Bush. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. Tonight's story is about Lockheed Martin whistleblowers. So this story really is about what encompasses the company of Lockheed Martin, who some of these whistleblowers are, people in the periphery, people in government. There has been a long storied history of government officials and sort of a collusion with industry, specifically Lockheed Martin. It's really going to be about some of the whistleblowers and the things that people have said that have worked at Lockheed Martin about UFOs and reverse engineering and things like that. So this story really starts out with Senator Harry Reid. So Senator Harry Reid has kind of become famous in the UFO circles as of late because he authorized a $22 million budget, essentially a congressional authorization, to look into some paranormal activities. Essentially, he tried to get some access to some classified material that he said was in the hands of Lockheed Martin. So he had insider knowledge that Lockheed Martin had their hands on UFO material, and he essentially tried to gain access to this, and he wanted to try to get Robert Bigelow to be able to use this material. So this $22 million was given to him for this program, given to Robert Bigelow, a billionaire. He has an aerospace company. So he wanted access to this material to reverse engineer it. Lockheed Martin was said to have had it. Harry Reid was said to have been blocked from obtaining any information about the material, where it's located, or have any access to these programs. Now, what ended up happening was the money, the $22 million, ended up getting put into Skinwalker Ranch, allegedly. So they were supposed to set up these buildings to have a transfer of technology from Lockheed Martin, supposedly Lockheed Martin, to Robert Bigelow's aerospace company so that his company could start doing work on this material. And Senator Harry Reid was supposedly aiding in this transfer of technology. Now, when that fell through and Harry Reid couldn't get approval for this program, supposedly the $22 million went into investigating the paranormal around Skinwalker Ranch. So this program that later on, kind of transferred into Brandon Fugel owning Skinwalker Ranch and doing his own investigation. All these documents into Skinwalker Ranch that was generated by the NIDS team, the National Institute for Discovery Science, that was created by Robert Bigelow to do this scientific investigation of the paranormal. All of those documents have been classified. We know that he had a close relationship with the government. He received government funding for this project. Anyway, so after this kind of situation happened, Harry Reid came forward and kind of talked about UFOs, admitted to some things around UFOs over the years, and more specifically, he admitted that Lockheed Martin had essentially this so-called crash retrieval material. Now, Harry Reid also kind of enveloped himself in the Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon situation. When Lou Elizondo came forward and said that he worked for the ATIP program, which was also started by Harry Reid and funded by Harry Reid, or he was one of the people that started the program, signed off on its funding. So the creation of the program, these people actually had to go to Harry Reid and give him briefings on the ATIP program, on the ALSAP ATIP program for the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program. And Lou Elizondo was supposedly ahead of this program at one point in time. When Lou Elizondo came forward, the Department of Defense said, oh, he has nothing to do with this. This was a DIA program. Lou Elizondo has no sort of authority over this program. He had nothing to do with it. Now, they eventually backtracked, but some reporters heard that Harry Reid disagreed, and they flew out to meet Harry Reid. And Harry Reid openly admitted, said, no, Lou Elizondo was there. He was in a senior leadership position for this program. So Harry Reid backed him up, and Harry Reid was one of the people that was briefed on the program as well as signed off for the creation of the program. So who better to know who was involved and who was a senior leadership position than Harry Reid, the person that's receiving these classified briefings from ATIP. So anyway, so now you have this kind of a bridge between Lockheed Martin, the kind of the ATIP program from Harry Reid. And another person we really have to talk about is Ben Rich. So Ben Rich was the second Lockheed Martin director of the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, which is the most famous aeronautical research centers in the world. I mean, they produce the most advanced aerial vehicles that the world has ever seen. But he was actually the protege and worked for many years with the former and the first director of Lockheed Skunk Works, which was a man by the name of Clarence Kelly Johnson. Now, Kelly Johnson is a famous person in aerospace. Kelly Johnson worked for Lockheed for many years. He became their first director of the Skunk Works, like I said, and he worked on the P-38 Lightning, the U-2 high-altitude spy plane, the F-104 Starfighter, and the SR-71 Blackbird. So he had his hands in the most advanced vehicles that the human race has ever created. Okay, so Kelly Johnson was famous, especially back then, before Ben Rich took over. Now, Kelly Johnson himself saw a UFO back in 1953 on December 16th. So he had a crew, and a lot of people don't know this, but back in the day when you developed an aircraft, the engineers would fly with the pilots. So they could get an understanding of, okay, the pilot says this is happening, you know, what does it feel like? Like they could actually be hands-on in the production of these aircraft. So there was a Navy aircraft that was supposed to be the most advanced reconnaissance aircraft ever made. So it had a ton of radar and antennas on it. Its purpose was supposed to be an early warning system for Soviet missiles. So its entire job was to track and detect these fast-moving missiles. And at the time, Kelly Johnson was a senior person in charge of this program developing this aircraft. So at the same time that Kelly Johnson and his wife sees this UFO in the sky, his aircraft is doing trials. Essentially, they're doing some R&D on this aircraft with many people on board. The pilots of this aircraft saw the UFO from the air, and Kelly Johnson saw it from the ground. And they reported on this, and it became known as the Kelly Johnson UFO incident of 1953. Now, the significance of this, a lot of people kind of blow it off like, oh, it's, you know, who knows what it was. But Kelly Johnson says that it sat in position with strong winds. It didn't go anywhere. And then it moved against the wind at a high rate of speed and flew away. Now, Kelly Johnson is literally in charge of the most advanced aerial vehicle company in the entire world. They have the most advanced vehicles ever created by mankind. Who would better, you know, name a better person? And it wasn't just Kelly Johnson that saw it. It was also engineers and pilots that were on the Navy aircraft. So you have a multitude of people triangulating this object and saying, like, this object did things that we just can't do. It had capabilities that they couldn't replicate at the time. So when you have literally the guy that became the director of Lockheed Skunk Works, the first director, and he's saying, yeah, that was something else. Like, I can't even explain this thing. And you have the top engineers in the entire world saying the same thing. The top pilots, test pilots in the entire world, like, what the heck was that? That shows that in 1953, there was an object capable of things that our best, engineers and scientists literally could not understand in 1953. So, but anyway, Ben Rich was actually his protege, and Ben Rich was brought to him 3 years before Ben Rich assumed the position of director of Lockheed Skunk Works. So Kelly Johnson brings him in and says, listen, I'm going to appoint you director, right? I'm retiring in 3 years. He stays true to his word. Ben Rich becomes director of Lockheed. Ben Rich goes on to develop the F-117 stealth fighter. He also developed a second generation U-2 spy plane. So he essentially integrated new capabilities to the U-2 spy plane, which went on for several decades more to be an effective aircraft for United States reconnaissance. He became known as the father of stealth. So Ben Rich literally brought in all of the stealth that we know today with the F-35s, with the B-2 bombers, with the stealth fighters. I mean, Ben Rich literally pioneered stealth technology for United States military. Now, why does this matter? Well, because Ben Rich multiple times was admitted that we have UFO technology and we have made major breakthroughs. Now, Ben Rich has stated multiple times, apparently, to other people that were in a position to know that we have this UFO technology. So I'm just going to read you a few of the things that Ben Rich has said over the years. So it says he admitted to Tom Keller, who wrote an article for the Mutual UFO Network's journal, and he said, "Inside Skunk Works, we were a small, intensively cohesive group consisting about 50 veteran engineers and designers and 100 or so expert machinists and shop workers. Our forte was building technology advanced airplanes of small number and high class for highly secret missions. We already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects, and it would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do it." Now, it says, he also said, "We now have the technology to take ET home. No, it won't take someone's lifetime to do it. There's an error in the equations, and we know what it is. We now have the capability to travel to the stars. First, you have to understand that we will not get to the stars using chemical propulsion. Second, we have to devise a new propulsion technology. What we have to do is find out where Einstein went wrong." Now, he also went on to say, when asked about how the propulsion systems work, he said, "How does ESP work?" And somebody answered him, "All points in space-time are connected." Ben Rich then said, "That's how it works." He goes on to say to another person, actually, a Lockheed engineer and friend of his, John Andrews, "There are two types of UFOs, the ones we build and the ones they build. We learned from both crash retrievals and actual hand-me-downs. The government knew and until 1969 took an active hand in the administration of the information." He goes on to say, much, much more, but he essentially has stated to multiple people at multiple times. There was also a third person that went to a lecture that he was giving. He was some sort of scientist at a lecture that Ben Rich was giving, and he essentially said the same thing, that we have this capability. He also talked about anti-gravity programs that were, he called them ultra black, top secret, something like that. Like he gave them a bunch of weird names, but essentially deep black programs. That's right, deep black programs that have this anti-gravity technology. If there are any people in the world that would know whether UFOs exist or whether alien technologies exist, it would be Kelly Johnson, it would be Ben Rich, and both of them have admitted to seeing some type of this technology. So later on, we go on to Don Phillips, and I'm going to actually just play a video. He was a former Lockheed Martin employee, and he came forward with the Disclosure Project and admitted to a lot of things about what Lockheed Martin actually knows. And so we're going to play some of that.
My name is Don Phillips, and I live in Los Angeles, California, and I was born in Los Angeles, California, and I have worked with government-sponsored agencies as well as spent my appropriate time in the military, and as a civilian, but also as a military person. I did have experiences with what we would refer to as unidentified flying objects. To time frame about 19 or 20, I started to work for, I entered college after high school, but I also went to work for Lockheed Aircraft Corporation. And after a year of employment in the regular field of aircraft construction and design, I was asked if I would like to go to a new department, or one that was already in gear, for a new project. And of course I said yes, not knowing exactly what it was, but I figured that it was in my best interest, and I did have interest in it because I got a little inkling of it from the person, the upper management, that had told me about this. Now, my studies had to do with the design, engineering, mechanical, electrical, and aeronautics. I was a pilot, a private pilot at that time, and still am. And at the time, what would it be, 1961, 62, I started my new job in what is called the Skunk Works. And I was introduced to the various divisions of the Skunk Works. It was purchasing, expediting, and engineering. I served in all of those during the 60s, and this went through 1965. Our projects were, of course, a contract special aircraft, flying aircraft for the government, the United States government, and other agencies of the government, of course, supplied pilots. And I say this because it's important to the defense of the United States and the free world. Free world means those that believe in the opportunities for all humankind. The projects that I worked on were ongoing, and when I left the employment of the Skunk Works to go into the military, I felt that this is something I wanted to come back to after serving my country. I think it was 1965, actually, when I first went into the military, and discovered that some of the assignments that I was put on in Las Vegas, or near Las Vegas, Nevada, were very much in close proximity to our areas where we tested our aircraft, and a lot of commonly known as Area 51. Studying some information, following the pathway on some information that had to do with NASA, that had to do with extraterrestrial visitation, and how real was it. Didn't matter about the sensationalism of it. That's how I came to know of the NATO report. But it was also through the military channels. I had to make some phone calls, and I did. And it was very nice to knock the dust off of those, because we can all say, wow, see where it's progressed since then, if we were willing to talk about it. We worked with the Central Intelligence Agency as contractors. That was during the time of the Skunk Works. During the military, I had been in a few different places around the world, particularly with combat support in the Vietnam War. That the actual work, the close activity, was pre-military. It was with the Skunk Works. You see, the CIA was one of our best customers. And it's the CIA that has one of the world's best air forces. It's not. We have Francis Gary Powers, yeah, we knew him. Schumacher, a lot of these people. They're very real people, and they were often moved around by politics. And I think that we can learn something from all of this. We don't necessarily have to be, what would you call it, open, but we don't have to lie about it. We just perhaps don't say something. We've got to keep each other honest, and we've been doing that for years. The technologies that I know about that were removed from the craft, and I think my understanding is that they were removed from the craft at Roswell in a manner that was not known to the guards or I call them wild security people surrounding the area. Had to be done rather quietly by specialists. And I'd like to add too that I feel that I'm not positive, but I think some of this technology came from crafts of other crashes. Okay, not just, there's a lot made of Roswell, and they're not even sure where the things, went into the earth near Roswell, but it's near Roswell, I know that. And I won't, I wouldn't say where the other areas are, but it happened to be in the area of New Mexico. I do know that there was, let me say this, that as far as the validation of these, what we call these little beings, the engineer that did some work for the military was asked if he'd like to do a special project, and it was in New Mexico, and it was to build a trainer, if you will, flight trainer, and he built the flight trainer as a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, and through the process of building, he discovered that he was to work with some other people. After it got to a certain point, the other people came out, and they were these little guys. Not much, kind of startling because they're all short people, but very, very intelligent. It's like very intelligent children, super intelligent children. And pretty soon it became like just us sitting here. And what they were building was a trainer for us to learn how to fly their craft. It's a very interesting approach.
Now that you've got all these people admitting all these things about Lockheed Martin and their capabilities, we just recently had a redacted video featuring John Stewart. Now, John Stewart said that he was contacted from a Lockheed insider. He was emailed about a top secret UFO recovery program that Lockheed Martin was running. And allegedly, they got into a firefight with American military persons after one of their experimental vehicles crash landed. And so we're going to play some of that video as well.
Does Lockheed Martin have its own alien recovery team? You heard me right. A team that gets a phone call, goes out, and recovers downed UFOs. A whistleblower at Lockheed Martin has now come forward to our next guest with stunning details about Lockheed's secret alien recovery program and reverse engineering program. But this whistleblower went on to claim, this is where it gets even more bizarre, that a Lockheed reproduction craft crashed in Nevada in 2004. At the same time, it was also being tracked by JSOC, JSOC, which of course is the Joint Special Operations Command. They both descended on this crash site at the same time, and a firefight ensued where two members of JSOC were killed, according to this whistleblower. That Lockheed whistleblower came forward to our next guest, John Stewart, former candidate for Congress in the office of Illinois governor. Joining us today on Redacted is that former guest of Redacted who created a shockwave the last time he was on, talking, of course, about the investigation into the provenance of that truly bizarre alien, alleged alien interview video film that came forward back in 1991. John joins us now with this unbelievable story. John, welcome back to the show.
Leighton, thank you. Thank you for having me. Just wanted to be clear that I am not coming on this show for any sensationalism. I am not going to be on this story as a journalist, as an independent investigator. My emails for the fourth time were swiped off my phone 3 days ago. Hence why I contacted you to kind of, get me out into the public to say, here's what I was told. I didn't investigate this. It was being told to me and another journalist who does not live in the United States. My emails got swiped. I went to the FBI. I made a police report in the town where I live in Deerfield, Illinois. And this is ridiculous. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. I've got a commercial real estate deal that I'm closing on behalf of my father on Saturday. All of the inner office memos are gone and swiped. It's been just chaos. So this is why I'm coming on. I don't need attention. I ran for governor. I've been a pro wrestler. I don't need this. I don't need this, but I'm gonna come on. I'm gonna tell the story. I'm gonna make it public to the government and all the military agencies. Don't worry. I'm not on the story and I'm not gonna investigate it, but I am gonna come public with what I was emailed, which has been a plethora of insiders and military whistleblowers after I was on your show who have besieged me with emails. I am not psychologically equipped with this. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a professional investigator, ufologist. These people have besieged me with these stories, and this one, I believe, is what tripped off someone swiping emails on all 4 email platforms on my iPhone, and this is the 4th time now, so I've had it. I've
So
had it.
let's
So
so
thank you for
let's
having me on.
My pleasure. And again, so let's go through what this insider has provided to you, Lockheed Martin information and documents and photos, which we'll show here in just a moment. We're going to show some runway photos also that this insider has sent to you and provided to you from Lockheed Martin. So take me back here. This Lockheed Martin insider tells you that in 2004, one of their craft that they had built using alien technology had crashed, and a firefight ensued between Lockheed Martin employees and JSOC, who descended on this site at the same time. So, can you go through this in more detail?
Absolutely. He simply sends me an email, says that and I am going to protect him, even though he really didn't ask. The only thing he ever asked me not to do was name the city and town of the Lockheed storage facilities, and will definitely absolutely do that. And I'm not even going to say where he works now because I didn't even know what the company was until I heard it on another podcast, and I almost fell off my chair. With that being said, I get an email about 2 weeks ago. Says he was in the military. He worked for DIA, a three-letter agency that Clayton is not happy with me because I finger the DIA as being running the alien interrogation and retention facility at one point south of Area 51. And he says that I once worked for Lockheed. I no longer do. I work for a subcontractor. So he was in the military, DIA, Lockheed. Now he works for another subcontractor. He said, I know why there is one of the confusions and the situations in the logjam in Congress regarding this NDAA disclosure and the disclosure amendment is that Congress finally knows and realizes that Lockheed has its own NHI, non-human intelligent craft. Well, I wrote him back. I'm like, well, everyone knows that the government, gave out metals, whatnot, maybe even whole craft to various agencies, Lockheed Skunk Works being one of them. He said, no, you don't understand. Let me finish the whole story. This is from him, not my investigation. He said that Lockheed eventually broke through, his words, of how to successfully reproduce a non NHI, a non-human intelligent craft. They were so successful at it that they ended up um, not informing the government of their breakthrough. And at one point, this letter tells me that Lockheed actually told the government, that craft, and I'm being glib here, that craft, that alien craft you gave us in 62, we just can't figure it out. You want it back? And I'm being glib. And we just, quote, we just can't figure out the technology. We can't move it past. We're at a firewall. Can't happen. A complete lie from Lockheed to the oversight committee or who was ever oversighting these black projects. This is from the whistleblower. On top of that, that Lockheed created its own, and this is in the 70s, created its own recovery team where they were this is kind of like two repo people trying to get two banks vying for the same car, trying to
Right, right.
repossess it. That they were actually tracking extraterrestrial craft along with aspects of the government, whether that be NORAD or JSOC, because Lockheed had developed advanced radar systems. They had their own aircraft and helicopters, and they developed this recovery team. And they also developed their own recovery team. So this team, listen to me very closely, folks, so that this team could pounce on their Lockheed craft that they reproduced that might have crashed so the government didn't get it. Does that make sense? So we've created this really advanced extraterrestrial-esque craft. We've lied to the government about it because we're going to hide this and just use it for our own good for whatever that is. And if this crashes, we need to recover it before the government recovers it. So the story is crazy. I'm like, absolutely unbelievable. I know he's legit because I know by the vernacular in his email, the coding, the abbreviations. I know an insider email in 12 seconds now, doing this for 5 years. He says that it gets even crazier. He says that in 2004, a Lockheed ARV, a alien reproduction vehicle, was flying in South Nevada. I will not give the small town, and it crashed. But this craft was being tracked by JSOC because JSOC thought it was actually an interplanetary or interdimensional extraterrestrial craft. I hope you're following me.
Right,
So
right.
it crashes in southern.
They thought this was an off-world vehicle. JSOC did.
Right, because
Right.
JSOC and most of the government have not been briefed in that Lockheed has successfully reproduced to an advanced degree replica extraterrestrial craft. In the 60s and the 70s, they developed something like a flux liner. It was a very basic alien reproduction vehicle. They made the leap, they made the jump, and I will not say how this happened. They made the leap and made the jump, kept this from the government. So when the government is tracking this Lockheed reproduction craft in 2004, they think it's an alien craft. It crashes. Again, this is his story, not my investigation, folks. It crashes in southern Nevada. JSOC, a JSOC recovery team and a Lockheed recovery team descend on this crash at the same time. Now, I'm assuming JSOC probably doesn't have military insignia because they're a covert military operation. Obviously, Lockheed didn't have military insignia. And Lockheed and JSOC, from what this whistleblower says, start a firefight because JSOC thinks it's terrorists. Lockheed thinks it's, whoever. And they have to protect Lockheed's craft, and a firefight ensues. It gets even crazier. This whistleblower claims that two JSOC airmen, two JSOC members, two JSOC soldiers, however you call them, I'm not a military person, were actually killed in this firefight.
With all these people, then you move on to, Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, coming out of the government. They have many decades of government expertise within these, classified programs. They come out, they're telling us that these vehicles exist, that we know about them, the government's known about them, they've lied about them. They've ushered in some disclosure of some videos that the military's taken of these unknown objects. That kind of brought in people like David Grush. And so we have a video of David Grush. He has the rank of major, although he was in I believe it's the GFC. You have to correct me if I'm wrong about that. But let me play a little bit of David Grush's testimony about what we have behind the scenes.
That the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, and I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to UNASCIF about.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when you have David Grush come forward and he talks about these things, when you have Lou Elizondo, when you have Chris Mellon, you have testimony from 40 whistleblowers that went to the Inspector General saying that we have these technologies. Everybody knows about it behind the scenes. These programs are kept top secret. We're not informing Congress about it. We're not informing the president about what we're doing, or at least many of them have alleged that the president is not getting briefings on these programs, and that may be in dispute. It's possible that the president or former presidents are lying about what they know about these programs. for I forget what they call it, but essentially plausible deniability. So it's possible the presidents know about this stuff and they're lying, but ultimately many of the members of Congress have tried to get access and have been denied access to these programs for which they are supposed to have oversight. So when you have, these people come forward, these whistleblowers, and they say, hey, there are these programs, I was a part of them, and then Congress goes, hey, give us these documents, and they go, we don't know what you're talking about. What ended up happening was Senator Tim Burchett and many other people signed on to essentially a UFO Disclassification Act. It's essentially a law that would force the government to release what they know about this phenomena. And out of nowhere, Mike Turner and Mike Roger opposed the bill to strike down the bill. They don't want this bill. They do not want to force the government to disclose what they know about UFOs and non-human intelligence. Both of these people are top receivers of donations for Lockheed Martin. So these people are essentially, their campaigns are on the Lockheed Martin payroll, and they've come out against any sort of disclosure about the UFOs, about this non-human intelligence that the government has. They opposed a bill that very simply said, if you have information about this, you have to release it. It's a very simple bill. If there's nothing there, like they keep saying, then, why not sign the bill? But you have two people that are taking large amounts of money from Lockheed Martin that refuse to do that. So anyway, lastly, I want to bring up Carl Nell. So this is Colonel Carl Nell. He worked for Lockheed Martin. Okay, so he just did a press event. Now, it was alleged that he is one of the 40 whistleblowers that came in with David Grush. But Colonel Carl Nell worked for Lockheed Martin Missile and Space. So literally their space division. Okay, and he didn't just work for them. He worked for Bell Laboratories. He worked with JSOC for a time. He has had a senior command position in multiple different places over many years, including Lockheed Martin. Now, he has come out and made some extreme statements about the nature of this UFO phenomenon. We're going to play a video of some of his statements.
Do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
Right. So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
And so, Carl, that is quite a bold statement. I'm wondering, and I'm curious, how confident are you that that is true?
There's zero doubt.
So, with all these people, coming out, they're saying that Lockheed Martin has this technology. They're saying that they know that this technology exists. They're saying the government knows all about it and is hiding it. You've got now probably like 40, 50 whistleblowers that have come forward supposedly from these black programs, openly admitting this to be true in full view of the public. And so I want to show you a video that was taken of an object that was caught driving down the road in a convoy. So whatever this object might be, a lot of people say it's just a next level drone and all these different things. Why not show us? If it's not using an exotic propulsion system, then why not let us see it? but the shapes of these objects are so strange that they don't make much sense from a conventional aeronautic standpoint. You've got them on legs, and yet their shape doesn't seem to be a typical airfoil, like they would fly properly in the sky. Let me show you one more video. Now, this video was supposedly captured at a Lockheed Martin facility, you can just take a look and decide what you think it is.
What the f is that? What the f is that?
So I guess what we're really getting down to is, does Lockheed Martin have their own secret space program? That's what these people are essentially alleging, that they figured out the equations, they understand where Einstein went wrong, they've done anti-gravity research, they have crashed and retrieved UFOs, they have created their own vehicles from those crash retrievals, and now we're seeing all these people come out of the woodwork claiming that the government knows about it. Lockheed's own employees are saying that Lockheed Martin knows about it and has access to this technology. And so I guess really the question is what do you think? Do you think Lockheed Martin has their own space program? And if so, what do their spacecrafts look like? And that's the news. If you'd like to support our channel, go to the description or in the pinned comment down below. That's the Unacceptable News. Don't like, don't subscribe, just run.